Hello and welcome to another video. So today I want to talk about feedback. When I say feedback, I'm not talking about a huge stack of Marshall amps wailing away at the back of a stage. No, I'm talking about the comments, criticism, advice that other people may give you about your music. So feedback is probably one of the most important areas or one of the most important tools that we have for our development as musicians and modular synth artists, but not all feedback is helpful. Good feedback will accelerate your growth and help you develop, whereas bad feedback will lead to doubt, confusion, maybe false confidence, and I'm sure these are all things that we encounter or have encountered in the past as musicians and creative people. But before we get into it, as usual, I would just like to invite you to hit that subscribe button if you're here watching these videos and you enjoy the content that is being produced. It really does help me and it helps the channel. Maybe you've been watching these videos for a while, or maybe you're somebody who is new here, in which case, welcome along. My name is Richard and I make videos about modular synth and creativity and music making and so on, and you are very welcome. So yeah, if you would like to see more of this content, then please do consider hitting the subscribe button. Okay, with that out of the way, let's continue with the video. So feedback, what am I talking about? So I'm talking about, those kind of comments that you might get on your videos, or maybe you play your music to somebody in real life and they listen to it and they give you some comments back, and sometimes that might be positive and sometimes it might be negative, and dependent on the situation, it can actually have quite a useful impact on your musical growth, or it could be quite detrimental to you. In some cases, maybe people will even, having received bad feedback, they will even give up entirely on what they are pursuing. I know that has happened to a lot of people, and I think it's probably happened to me as well at some point. Now the thing is with modular synth music, because it doesn't really sort of follow conventional expectations, and so it can be difficult sometimes to get good feedback, and so because of this, it's probably even more sensitive or critical to actually make sure that if you do receive feedback, that you can tell if it's good feedback and that if it is useful for you. So first of all, let's just think of some of the different ways that you might receive feedback and where problems might occur. If you are drinking a cup of tea along with me, or maybe something slightly stronger, I would like you to take a sip of that every time I say the word feedback, because I have a feeling it's going to be quite a lot. So first of all, you could receive feedback from family, friends, and usually, actually not always the case, but quite often this will be positive feedback, because they're your friends, they're your family, they want to encourage you. And even if secretly they might be thinking, goodness me, what is this dreadful noise, they won't say that. They will offer you some sort of positive feedback, and maybe it's because they fear hurting your feelings, or they want to be polite, or they want to be uncritical. But either way, they will say something like, "Oh, that's really good. That's really interesting." Blah 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 blah. But truthfully, that feedback is worthless. Equally, the other way could be true, and this is definitely my case, where my wife will hear what I'm doing and she'll say, goodness me, what is that god awful noise that you're making? And that is not useful feedback for me, because yes, it is a god awful noise, but I understand that noise, and hopefully other people who might listen to it and enjoy it will understand that noise and appreciate it perhaps. So in some cases the opinion of a family member or friends is not always useful. And you know, the same was true as when I was growing up. I played in various bands, you know, and I liked metal. I liked a lot of heavy music that my parents didn't really understand. So if I tried to play them some of my music, they would just you know, they wouldn't get that, and their feedback probably wouldn't be particularly positive. And so it's important not to take those kind of that kind of feedback on board, really, because it's not going to be helpful for you. The next, I suppose, type of feedback that you might encounter is just random public feedback, the sort of thing that you will encounter maybe on YouTube or you know, other platforms as a comment. It's often uninformed. It can be negative. It can be based on irrelevant expectations. You know, if you've put a video up with some music and, you know, depends on what you've got on the thumbnail, you might have somebody who's expecting to see some kind of, I don't know, some kind of techno or something, and then, you know, they click on the video and it's some kind of experimental drone thing, and they will just think, what, you know, what is this? It's not what I was expecting, and you'll receive negative feedback. And again, you know, it's not useful. And then you know, we have sort of people who you could say uninformed feedback. So these are people who have no understanding of the area of music that you're operating in. You know, they've no understanding of modular synthesis or experimental music or electronic music maybe, and they've got no sort of context to sort of judge it against. And you know, they might offer comments that are you know, overly positive or overly negative, because they haven't got the sort of the expertise or the knowledge to sort of be able to offer a really sort of useful, you know, critical comment. And you know, this could be somebody who's encountering that type of music for the first time, and maybe they really like it, and are sort of blown away with it, but it's the first time that they've ever come across this music, so it's something really new for them. And so of course, you know, if you can think back to the first time you heard something new that was really amazing, you probably had an overinflated sort of positive opinion of it, which is not to say that it wasn't deserving of that, but that will definitely sort of sway your opinion. And if you were to, you know, offer feedback based on that opinion, it might be sort of slightly biased. The same can be true in the other direction. If somebody encounters something for the first time and they don't really understand what they're hearing, then they might offer negative comments. And of course, you know, with further listening and further exposure, somebody can eventually come to understand the music that they're hearing and appreciate it, and then be in a better position to offer comments. You know, and I can see myself in that category where I've encountered certain types of music, you know, and thought, oh my God, is this even music? It's just so I don't know, so experimental or you know, whatever, and it takes a little bit of listening to really understand what's being presented, and to sort of be able to step outside that initial opinion. So yeah, so those sorts of reactions aren't always helpful. So if those are some of the things where, you know, feedback is not necessarily or the types of feedback that are not necessarily going to be helpful for us, then what does good feedback actually look like? Well, usually good feedback will be informed in some way, so it's going to come from somebody who at least has some sort of basic understanding of what you're trying to do and the type of music that you're trying to create, the aesthetic that you're working with, the tools that you're working with, the style that you're working in, and they don't necessarily need to be an expert, but they have some sort of awareness of that. The other thing that somebody will do if they're offering good feedback is that they will try to be they will try to be quite specific about, the sorts of things that you're saying. So rather than just saying, oh, that's really good, that's a brilliant piece, that was really awesome, blah, blah, blah. They might say, oh, the section at 3 minutes and whatever was really interesting. I really liked what you did there by transitioning from this one part to another part. But it could do with a little bit more of a dynamic shift. It might be better if you tried this, and offered some, some specific advice that you can work with. And I think that, that's probably something that we are all guilty of in the comments on YouTube. How many times have you watched a video of another musician, another Modular Synth video, and you've left a comment of like, wow, that was awesome, or I don't know, whatever. But something that's, it's positive, but it's sort of fairly kind of meaningless in a way. I know I've done that many times because, in the moment you have that initial reaction and you're trying to be supportive, or you want to be supportive to other people on YouTube and so on, and so you put these comments out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you were to give a little bit more thought to the comment that you're writing, and some people do this, and I've had feedback like this as well, and it always feels better when you receive this kind of feedback, I always think, where they're actually picking out specific things that they liked about the music, or specific things that they thought that was good but this might be better. So good feedback will usually be quite specific. You could also say that good feedback, it can be supportive, but it will also be honest as well. So you're not going to shy away from if there are certain areas that could be improved, and I think it's always good to sort of have a bit of a balance where if you are offering some feedback like that, where you're suggesting something that could be improved, that you also give a positive comment as well. So if somebody is giving you that sort of feedback, then you can try and be open about that. You can take the compliment, that's great, but then here is something that I can work on, here's something I can work with to actually help me improve somewhat. And of course, good feedback is always delivered with the intention of making you a better person. It's not there to sort of tear you down or highlight your weaknesses or anything like that. Really, the intention of good feedback is so that you can improve and you can grow. So those are some of the things to look out for, I think, in terms of bad feedback, good feedback. So good feedback is often informed, by somebody who knows what they're talking about. It's specific, it's supportive, but it will be honest as well, and it's there to help you grow, as opposed to bad feedback, which sometimes it will be from people who don't necessarily know what they're talking about, or their expectation isn't matching up to what you're delivering, and it might be overly positive or overly negative. So that kind of leads on to the next thing. How do you find, how do you access useful feedback? And I suppose there's probably a few ways that you can do this. And the first and foremost is online. It can be a bit of a double-edged sword, of course, because if you post stuff online, you are opening yourself up to feedback from anybody and everybody that comes along. But there are certain places, maybe particular forums that you might engage with and get to know the people in there that post regularly, and that could be a place where people can offer supportive feedback, especially if there's not sort of everybody's chipping in together. That's what I was trying to say. YouTube is great for this, but there's a lot of noise on YouTube as well. And it could be don't know, Discord groups or forums, whatever. There's all sorts of places that you can get to online. It doesn't even have to be online. It could be, you know, sort of a local meetup where people are sort of playing. I know, you know, some of these like EMOM nights that are popping up around the UK are probably great places to receive feedback from other people. And if there is like a community modular night near you, that's probably a great place to go, you know, and present some of your stuff and hopefully receive some feedback. You could also try and sort of look out for some kind of like mentor or peer, somebody that you trust and respect, that you know is going to give you that sort of honest feedback. And you know, this could come from somebody that you might sign up to a course, or it could be somebody that's at a similar level to you, that, you know, in terms of like you know, the music that you're outputting, they're not like so far ahead of you that, or so far you know, below you. That below you doesn't sound like the right thing to say, does it? But I think you probably know what I mean. Yeah, so somebody is at a similar level to you, or some kind of mentor on a, you know, from a course or something like that. Occasionally, it might even be possible to reach out to certain artists and you know, to engage with them and perhaps even receive feedback there. So, you know, in the past, I had, for a very brief period, I had some lessons with Caitlin Aurelia Smith, and those were very, very useful for me. I'm not sure that she still does those now, but it was, you know, it was a few years ago, and yeah, I just sort of had these one-to-one lessons via Zoom. And that was really helpful, you know, because that's somebody who has gone through, you know, everything that I was going through or wanting to go through, and, you know, knew the path, so to speak, so was able to give, you know, honest feedback. So those are some of the ways in which you might receive feedback. What I would say is, you know, it is important to try and sort of recognize, it can be difficult to recognize when the feedback that you are receiving is good or bad, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in the comments that you're receiving, especially if that is on something like YouTube. You know, and it's very easy to sort of take those comments to heart, and that can be very damaging. You know, if they are overly negative, then it might make you feel like you want to give up, and that you're not really it's not really worth pursuing whatever it is that you're doing. If they're overly positive, then that may give you a false sense of where you are, you know, and that's not going to help you grow and improve. And all that does is kind of sort of, you know, feed your ego in a way. So it is useful to sort of be able to, you know, especially when reading comments, to be able to sort of step back and sort of assess if comments are sort of vague, you know, or, you know, sort of, oh, this is really boring, this is really weird, I don't get this, then that's not useful, and you can ignore those. Don't get sort of tied up in them. You know, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit today for some reason. Yeah, so vague comments that don't offer any sort of advice or, you know, an area for improvement, they're not worth getting into. Feedback that's based around people's taste. You know, if you put a video up and then somebody puts a comment, I don't like ambient music, well then that's not a critique of what you've done. That is somebody really that's just saying, I don't like ambient music. You know, it's not useful for you. Sometimes I think that there are people who they do go out of their way, especially on YouTube and well, probably on all platforms really, they do go out of their way to just be kind of like overly negative. And I've had some of those comments on this channel in the past as well, and I try to be a little bit light-hearted about it, but it does, you know, it does sometimes, especially in the initial reading, you really think, oh, I don't feel so good about that now. But you have to remember that those comments, that feedback is not good feedback. Anything that's, you know, any kind of like personal attack or anything like that, that's not feedback. It's probably, you know, fueled by some other emotion that person has, but, you know, maybe jealousy or envy or whatever, and we can just ignore those sorts of comments. They're not helpful for us, you know. And that perhaps is a skill that you have to develop over time. You have to be able to sort of filter out some of this stuff, and take in what is useful and discard what isn't. You know, and sometimes, you know, even with good feedback, you don't always have to act on it. At the end of the day, it's just somebody's opinion. You know, if it resonates with you, then you can act on it. But if it doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to act on it. You can do something else. You know, it's just somebody's opinion at the end of the day. But, you know, over time, you start to learn where you can sort of trust these things, and, you know, where you can open yourself up. Because that's the other thing, you kind of, in order to sort of take on board that feedback, you have to be able to open yourself up, and you have to be prepared and willing to receive that criticism, and that can be difficult as well at times. And sometimes, you know, we can as a shield to all the bad feedback that's out there, all the bad comments and so on, you can sort of close yourself off, which makes it even more difficult to receive something openly when it is genuine and it is good feedback. So you have to sort of learn to sort of be able to filter these things out and spot some of these signs of when something is actually worth taking on board and when it's not. So I guess, you know, to sort of summarize, it's, you know, if you can find you know, some sort of small informed group or person or whatever that can help you, and you can trust them and they can offer you supportive feedback, then, you know, that is worth its weight in gold in terms of your own development. You have to be willing to sort of hear uncomfortable things at times, but, you know, you don't have to let that derail you. And, you know, at the end of the day, there's always going to be bad feedback out there, and, you know, learning to sort of filter that out is also quite important. So I think that's kind of, you know, what all I wanted to say on that topic. I hope you have found that interesting and useful. You know, how do you approach feedback? Do you have sort of trusted people that you turn to for feedback, you know, or do you just kind of try and, you know, plow on and just do your own thing and ignore everybody out there? I did think about, actually, some time ago, it might be interesting to sort of try and set up perhaps like I don't know, a Discord thing or something like that. You know, this could come through the Patreon thing perhaps, but, you know, maybe some kind of Discord thing where people can post their music specifically for critique, knowing, you know, we maybe would set up some rules or something where, you know, you've got to offer some positive comments and then some something for improvement. You know, some kind of safe space outside of YouTube. I don't know, that could be something for the future, perhaps, something to think about. Yeah, what do you think of that as an idea? Would anybody be interested in joining some kind of sort of Discord thing? I mean, there probably is, like, you know, those sorts of things already in existence, but it might be nice to do something, you know, around this channel as well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that, and as ever, of course, if you enjoyed this video, then thank you for watching, and please hit the subscribe button and the like button, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Cheerio.